first chapter of the book, you devote a large portion of that chapter to talking about your time growing up on the farm north of Jackson.
Right here, yeah.
Yeah, share with us some of the memories that you have, I guess, of being a farm boy from Jackson County in the early 1870s.
I think that's actually the name of the first chapter, Farm Boy, right? Just establish who I am really right out of the gate. Thank you, by the way, everybody. This is, in a lot of ways, this is our book. It's our story of Jackson, Minnesota, pushed out into the world at large, to the rock and roll community, and I wanted all my friends to be thrown under the bus with me on it. So some of you will see your names in there. Lee Meacham, Jim Tusa, my buddy Greg Handovit, and Brad Schmidt, a bunch of us who all grew up together and playing and stuff. And of course, my brother Elliot, and mother. Simply put, I just had a great upbringing here. It was great, and good family. Graduated out of this school, a lot of people play rock and roll because they want to rebel. And you guys made it pretty hard to rebel because there was nothing to rebel against. Our Savior's Lutheran Church was really nice to me. My parents were good. The school was good. And, so I think probably the earliest stories really for me were, life on the farm was great. I mean, I guess I remember at one point, really young, we were remodeling the kitchen, and taking the hammer and busting through the plasterboard and the low slat wood. And, that's a great feeling when you're like 5, just beating on something, and destroying it, right? And of course, my mother was that week later, we were up on top of a shed, and the cousins from Washington came, and we were like ripping the shingles off. It's like, I remember, my mom and dad walking out and going, "What in the name's sake are you doing ripping this building apart?" It's like, well, it's a perfectly good building. It looks like it needs ripping apart. So, but one of the things growing up here, we had obviously the grain leg and that. I remember when that was being built, climbing up that. I think one leg is about 90 feet, the other is about 120 feet, 110 feet, something like that. And I, for whatever reason, didn't have a fear of heights at all. And I loved the higher I could get, the better. And catwalks and top of silos and all that stuff. I love that. And that's just changed. Because I think at some point you realize you might die if you fall. But when I was young, I had no fear, and I love that. So those kind of things. And I wrote it too in the book about, wide open spaces where pull the car up, leave the key in the car. You don't lock your doors at night. At least at the farm we did. And, it was safe growing up. And I lived, when I moved from here, I moved out to Los Angeles. Obviously, that changed immediately. And even I lived in Scottsdale, which is a nice, safe, beautiful suburb of Phoenix. But even there, you don't take the keys to the car, you lock the doors, you set the alarm and all that stuff. So, life is uniquely wholesome and safe here. I guess that in general is just such a great memory and feeling that I have. Even now when I come back.
David, what inspired you to pursue a career in music? I mean, was it a particular person or an event in your life as a child that said, I want to pursue a career in music, I want to be a rock and roll?
It was definitely something that was kind of put upon me. I remember Dwight Tangy, I think, Reverend Tangy from Our Savior's Lutheran Church, his son, his name was Dwight. He had long hair. Not rebellious, because it was the 70s. And he was the cool pastor's son. He would listen to WLS AM out of Chicago. I remember he picked me and Elliot, my brother. We were the first, probably third pickup on the route in the morning. So we'd ride from 7:15 to 8:15 for an hour, coming into town before school started at 8:30 in the morning. And listening to WLS, and that's when things like Kiss, Styx, Sweet, Foreigner, BTO, these kind of things were being played on the radio. And for whatever, man, that just spoke to me. My mom had Beatles records, she had her Elvis records, and Motown records, pretty well, things like that. But when I heard stuff, these were like men singing harmonies and ripping dual guitar leads and stuff like that. And it's like, man, that got me, and especially Kiss. I remember going over to in Lakefield to, what was the barbecue place over there? Hilo. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Hilo. There's always like Saturday night barbecue, come on, eat all you want, kind of thing, right? And I remember there was a jukebox downstairs on the dance floor that had Kiss shouted out loud. And I would go down there and try to play that song all the time. And we just played a show with kids this last summer in Wisconsin. And again, I was like a fan over there watching them, you know. And it was cool because Paul Stanley came out to watch us play. So it's one of those moments where it's like, wow, we were right. We're contemporaries with your idols. And, you know, playing the bass, that's a pretty unlikely instrument to ever pick up. And, of course, guitar players give us a hard time because they just say, yeah, you know, it's a guitar with less 2 strings. So, in other words, you must be stupid because you can't play on 6 strings, right? Mine have 5, so I'm on 1 short, that's all. 5 strings. But, you know, that bass for some reason spoke to me. They used to sit on the farm on Saturday nights and watch hee-haw. You know, which I did not like the music, but I would watch it, and I'd watch their instruments, and the big fat strings, and the long neck. There was something about the bass that, for whatever reason, the good Lord put that upon me, and that's been my tool to make my way around the world these last 30 years since I left home.
The story of how you came to you know, develop your signature style of playing bass and your stage presence is kind of an interesting one. Can you share that with us?
Yeah, you know, growing up, I was, you know, all my rock and roll heroes, Gene Simmons, Ellefson, whoever it was, had these big Ampeg amplifiers. Guitar players had big Wall Marshall amps, and that's what we all aspired to. But I couldn't afford a big amp like that, and we had lots of music down on Main Street, and they were great because I'm glad they opened that store because they brought in a brand of guitars and amps called Music Man, and they also had records in there. And it's where I bought my first AC/DC record, Sex Pistols, Judas Priest, Unleashed. I mean, those records changed my life. I mean, and a lot of them I bought because the album covers look cool, right? You get guys with long hair with flying V's in the air. I'm like, you know. So lots of music changed my life. I mean, just who would have thought, right? But but it was interesting because you know, to play with guys, and I realized early on, guitar players are always too loud. They just always want to, you know, and it's easy for them to get loud. Low wattage in a guitar amplifier produces a lot more volume. You need kind of 2 to 1 of a bass guitar. And so I realized that if I started playing with a pick, rather than a lot of bass players play with their fingers, you start playing with a pick and you can get this really sharp attack to the tone. And it would help me cut through, you know, like Greg handed it and Lee Meacham's guitars, right? I had Jerry Beaver from Wyndham, like, these guys play loud. They all play loud, you know. So, but that was a big part of it. And so when I, years later, met David Stain and started Megadeth, I was playing with my fingers a little bit, but our music was really intricate and pretty progressive, actually. So I grabbed the pick and it's like, there it is. That's the tone. And then I could rip along and play, you know, the riffs. That really developed my tone quite
Just real quick, something along with that, it allows you to hold the bass in a little more manly position.
More manly position, yeah. Well, you know, it's funny, the electric bass, which was invented historically by a man named Leo Fender of the iconic Fender guitars, you know, he invented the electric guitar with a pickup and an amplifier. And then he would go and see these swing bands and stuff playing, and you realize the bass players had these big upright basses, you know, like you'd see in swing bands or jazz bands. And that bass player had a hard time being heard. So Leo's idea was, well, if I can take that bass and kind of turn it into a guitar-like instrument, the bass player can have an amplifier and be as loud as the guitar player. So even Leo was working on this thing that I struggled with, right? But the thing about it is guys will be coming from playing like this, you know, you can kind of have the bass a little lower, you can have it up higher. And I was thought this didn't look right. But the way Gene Simmons did it with a pick and breathing fire looked way more manly, you know, it was way cool. I was like, I need to do it the way Gene's doing it. So the pick became part of that.
As you developed your style, who were your mentors?
You know, mentors, again, I had idols, of course, the big guys that, you know, I bought their records and dreamed, you know, about being them one day. And then mentors were guys like, you know, there's a cool story in there about a couple guys here in town, Kent Libro and Mike Cushman, they were in Elliott's grade 2 years ago. But they were playing in bands, or they didn't know how to play. So, and when you become a musician in a little town like Jackson, you're looking for anybody who might be a musician, you know. you've got a Megadeth, you must be a musician, or at least be hip to music, right? So you start hanging out in the hallways of school, and so I would look for anybody that played. So we'd start putting bands together, and we had our first band was called Headstone, because that was like as metal as we could be at age 12. It was like the darkest, most macabre thing you could think of. That's cool, you know. And then Mike and Kent moved up and started playing with Jim Tusha and Lee Meacham, and then they would form a band. So they had a band called River City Band. And Lee and Jim were probably 16, 17 years old. So they were older, and I walked in on rehearsal, and they were tearing it up. I mean, they're playing like Leonard Skinner, and like these are like, wow, these guys are like real guitar players, you know. So lots of times it was just musicians I played with. They kind of became mentors to me in a certain way, and I realized I was always the younger guy playing with older musicians, and it forced me to get better. I mean, I was always pretty good because I was really into it. It was my passion, and I wanted to be good at it. But when you play with older musicians, those guys would, you know, it kind of raised the bar, you know, so it forced me to become a better player. So those are just a couple of guys locally. And then, you know, I guess as I moved to California, there was, you know, I think what I realized when you get to California, to the big music cities, everybody can play really good, at least if they're going to be in professional music. And you realize at that point, it isn't about what do you know, what do you know. It's like, if they assume that if you're in the room, you're already good enough for it. So at that point, it becomes more about, do you have a unique style? Can you write? You look like a rock star, you know, there's what, like, that becomes the benchmark of what, basically, are you sellable? Because now you're in an industry that wants to sell you, because record companies are in the business of selling records, agents are in the business of selling concerts, and all of a sudden you're a commodity. I mean, you realize as a musician, you're kind of the ditch digger of the music business, quite honestly. And, you know, I always use this pyramid mindset, which is, you know, we always think as the rock stars or jocks or whoever, the A students, whatever, we're always at the top, right? You know, and I'll just use rock and roll, for instance. You know, we always think at the top, like, we're the top of the heap. But you realize when you flip it over, you're really at the bottom. And, you know, at the top, you're here, and then you get your manager, and all the bottom of the fans, right? You know, and you flip it over, and you realize the fans are at the top. Because without them, there is no agent, there's no manager. No record company, there's no you. So it really became a paradigm shift for me to really understand that, you know, when you walk on that stage and someone's paid money to come and see you perform, they are the boss, you know, and they are the ones, you know, they bought a ticket, entertainment, and that's your job on the stage. You're not there to have them worship you. You're there basically to rock their world and give them entertainment. So that, I think, even in Megadeth, is our mindset when we walk on the stage. But
you mentioned your mom, and is Fran here tonight? She is. Make it? Okay. Where are you? Okay. Oh, there you are. Hello. When I get the chance to visit with her up at Good Sam every once in a while, it just strikes me that such a sweet, wonderful lady could be the mother of a pioneer of thrash. It's her fault. In your book, though, you make mention of how supportive your mom and your dad were in pushing you to follow your dream. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we talked about that on the radio just yesterday, too. It's, you know, my mom, she caught one of Elvis's scarves at an Elvis show down at, at Auditorium down in Des Moines, I think, right? And it's promised to Marty Friedman. He gets it, so it's his scarf to have, I guess. But, you know, Mom was into, again, she's one who had the musical abilities in the house. My dad clearly was, you know, didn't claim to have any musical sense at all. But I guess that was kind of the cool thing, is I probably got some of the musical genes from Mom. And my dad was very much an astute businessman. You know, more than a farmer, he was a businessman, and that's why he ran a great farm, because he understood business. And I think, you know, as I was getting serious about it, they realized that, I don't know, I can't speak for them, but it seemed to me that at some point it was like, David's going to go do this, so we can either support him or fight him. And why fight him? I guess my dad, seeing that I was getting serious about it, helped me buy equipment and a PA system and bought a trailer for our van and eventually gave me that van to drive to California. And having that kind of support, you know, again, took away the rebellion, so I didn't have to fight with the parents and stuff. But having that wind in my sails helped me really. It's made me realize, man, when everyone's on your side, they want to see you succeed. They want to see you be successful. And I think that helped me when I got out to California to know that I wasn't having to, you know, sort of come up with some excuses about things that they were, you know, in it with me rather than standing against me.
Talking about how business has changed in all areas around the country over the years. In the music business, how are things changed? Any frustrations that you've run into, whether your creativity is curtailed because of the marketing or the business?
Well, the internet changed everything for all of us. I mean, there was a really good book that someone recommended I read called The Roaring 2000s. A friend of mine in Phoenix that recommended it. And in that book, it talks about the three major evolutions of life as we know it as humans. And the first being the printing press. Back in maybe the 15th year of print, maybe you would know, 1500s, right? Long time ago. And the first book printed was the Bible, apparently. And how the printed word connected people in a way that had never connected the world before. The second one was turn of the century when Henry Ford invented the assembly line, because of the ability to basically modernize basically create industrialized nations, which we were, you know, the first probably, or one of the first. And then the third one was going to be the internet. And at the time, the big internet.com boom was happening, boom and bust. And this is a really interesting book, and it really kind of opened my mind to something that I saw happening. In 1994, Capitol Records built Megadeth, the very first band website ever, called Megadeth Arizona. We had relocated to Arizona. We were doing a new record called Euthanasia. And I remember the executives from Capitol Records flying out to the studio. We're talking with our manager about this thing called the internet. And the question was, well, what is it? What does it do? And everyone's like, we really don't know. We don't know, but it's going to be huge. It's going to be big, you know. And you can tell even the record companies, and of course entertainment, let's face it, especially Hollywood, they're pretty much on the cutting edge. And, you know, they set trends, fads come out of that town. And so the internet was clearly this thing that they wanted to somehow get their arms around because they saw it as a way to market. At one point, as I understand, Sony actually held a patent on an idea that had all of the record labels agreed to work with them, would have standardized music distribution on the internet. But because they're Sony, and he's Warner Brothers, and I'm Capitol, we're not going to play ball with Sony, so they fought each other. And what happened is we all know Napster, and a lot of us metal guys know the Metallica fight that happened with Napster, and the backlash that happened from that. Because Napster basically let all of our music be sold, given away for free on the internet. And really, Steve Jobs from Apple saved the day for all of us. I mean, he's probably the reason I can pay a mortgage and, you know, have an income from the music business today. He didn't do it because he was thinking about like little old Megadeth. He just wanted to sell iPods. You know, so for him, he's like, well, I got this thing. How do I get content in this thing? Well, maybe I'll cut deals with all the record labels, and I own a store, and when you buy an iPod, you can get your music for cheap. So, I mean, Steve, of course, thinking in this big vision picture that he thought in, really captured and cut these really fair deals with the record companies, and we get paid from those, and it really set a new standard of how we would get paid from the internet. And I think now we all know you can't just go on the internet and take things. You know, just like you can't walk into the store down here and walk out with a gallon of milk if you're arrested. You can't just walk into somebody's house and take their music, or walk into an internet store and take their music. And I think it took a while for people to understand that. But, you know, music takes time, there's money, there's people involved in it, and in order to create it in a way that we can all enjoy it in our homes and our stereos, on the radios, that there's a process and a lot of money behind that, and people are entitled to earn that money back.